Hello, thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be reading through the story of Hagar and Ishmael. So if you have a Bible, feel free to follow along. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, and when she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, "See, now the Lord has restrained me from bearing children. Please go in to my maid, perhaps I shall obtain children by her." So Sarah is barren. She wants a she wants Hagar, the Egyptian maidservant, to go in her stead to have a lineage for Abram. And Abram heeded the voice of Sarai. Then Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. So he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress became despised in her eyes. Then Sarai said to Abram, "My wrong be upon you. I gave my maid into your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, I became despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between you and me." So Abram said to Sarai, "Indeed, your maid is in your hand. Do to her as you please." And when Sarai dealt harshly with her, she fled from her presence. Now the angel of the Lord found her by a spring in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, Sarai's maid, where have you come from, and where are you going?" And he said, "I'm fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai." So Sarai must have been really, really mad at Hagar for her to leave. Verse 9, the angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand." Then the angel of the Lord said to her, "I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude." And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. He shall be a wild man. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren." Verse 13, then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, "You are the God who sees." For she said, "Have I also seen him who sees me?" Therefore the well was called Bir Lahai Roy. Observe, it is between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram named his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. So, a couple notes on that chapter we just read. A lot of people think very poorly of Hagar, when I don't think that's warranted, because Sarai, she wanted a lineage, as did Abram, and it was a completely legitimate relationship and child. As we read, Hagar became Abram's wife as well, and the child was then would be legitimate. So that's a note I wanted to say. Verse 17, then Abram was 99 years old. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "I am Almighty God. Walk before me and be blameless, and I will make a covenant between me and you, and will multiply you exceedingly." Then Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, "As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be a father of many nations." That father of many nations, both the Ishmaelites and Israelites. "No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham." So right now we just have a name change, and all throughout the Bible, from Saul to Paul, from Simon to Peter, to from Sarai to Sarah, Abram to Abraham, Jacob to Israel. I mean, all of these, it's kind of like a sign of rebranding, when God claims you, if you will. That's a way of thinking about it. Verse 5, no longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be called Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings shall come from you. I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you and their generations for an everlasting covenant to be God to you and your descendants after you. Also I give to you and your descendants after you the land in which you are a stranger, all the land of Canaan, as an everlasting possession. I will be their God. Verse 9, and God said to Abraham, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male among shall be circumcised. So as a sign of this covenant of Abraham and his descendants, circumcision. It's a sign of the covenant. Just like the rainbow was a sign of, the covenant between God and Noah. Circumcision is a covenant between God and Abraham and his descendants. And you shall all be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. There's that sign. Verse 12, he who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised, every male child in your generations, he who is born in your house, or bought with money from any foreigner who is not your descendant. He who is born in your house, and he who is bought with your money, shall be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised male child who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that person shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. So the lacking of doing that is a sign of breaking the covenant. And one thing what I wanted to mention is it's a sign of the covenant, and it's also an external symbol for your internal heart condition, which is circumcision of the heart, which you could say matters more. And it's an outward symbol of that. And the Torah is all filled with external symbols for internal realities, you could say. And the condition, your condition. Verse 15, then God said to Abraham, as for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. And I will bless her and also give you a son by her. Then I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples shall be from her. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said in his heart, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. So Abraham doesn't believe God that that God will allow them to have and bear a child. Sarah to bear a child. Verse 19, then God said, no, Sarah your wife shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his descendants after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. So you could say as a token for Abraham, he's also blessing Ishmael, even though Ishmael isn't, Ishmaelites are not God's people. He's blessing him for the sake of Abraham. He shall beget 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. Verse 21, but my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this set time next year. Then he finished talking with him, and God went up from Abraham. So Abraham took Ishmael his son, all who were born in his house, and all who were bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskins, that very same day as God had said to him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. Ouch. And Ishmael and his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. Again, ouch. That very same day, Abraham was circumcised, and his son Ishmael, and all the men of his house. And remember, a couple chapters ago, he's got a lot of servants in his house, so that's a lot of people. That very same day, Abraham was circumcised, and his son Ishmael, and all the men of his house, born in the house or bought with money from a foreigner, were circumcised with him. So we will stop there, and we'll pick up in 18. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next video.